we are live. Welcome to TOKENVERSE, everyone, a podcast powered by SMFW.io, where we discuss the ins and outs of crypto, bringing you meaningful and mission-driven conversations based on trust and growth. I am Bogdan Popa, SMFW's head of community and today's host. And before we dive deep into today's episode, it's important to mention the following disclaimer. This podcast episode is not financial advice, nor any offer to sell or solicitate an offer to purchase an interest in any entity or investment vehicle. This podcast is for the purpose of informing users of activity occurring on SMFW.io and educational purposes only. And we would also like to present you our new referral promo. Sharing is caring, everyone. In the WAGMI spirit, we have updated our referral program. You can now give your friends a 50% discount on trading fees and earn each time they trade. Get more out of your trading and friendships now at smfw.io referral. And we are ready to get into today's episode. So for everyone listening or watching us, welcome to today's episode. Today, we are jumping into Hedera's decentralized ecosystem with no other than Conor Devlin, co-founder of Hedera Starter. Conor, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to host you.
Howdy. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Very excited to kind of talk with you and then kind of share with FMFW and the rest of the community kind of what's going on in Hedera's neck of the woods.
That sounds like a plan. So if you could just introduce yourself to our community, that would be great.
Yeah. So my name is Conor Devlin, co-founder of HederaStarter. Part of the leadership team. Our other co-founder is Mark, and he handles all the investor side and kind of more behind the scenes, book building, things like that. I'm more of the face and kind of operational lead for the project. And it's been a wild journey. I think we really started to go public back in February with kind of our intentions and our plans, and now we're nearing almost the beginning of May at this point, and we're getting ready to launch in May. And so now, all full steam ahead with in May, and then getting all the tech stuff crossed, all the I's and T's dotted, and all that jazz, and just getting prepared to launch our DApp, launch the token, and then begin onboarding and deploying projects and gradually filling up the overall Hedera ecosystem. So that's kind of a little background on myself and HederaStarter and what's kind of going on with us.
That's great. So from what I'm gathering, you have quite a full plate at the moment.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, we have a large team, and they're kind of all over the world. And I meet with people in the ecosystem, really at any point in the day. And so I'm waking up at 3 a.m. and going to bed at 9, 10 p.m. So it's quite a long day with lots of stuff going on.
That's wild. Yeah, that's a wild journey for you, especially in the past few months, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really started to get it started up in January, but it's really picked up in February, and since then it's only going to get busier as we get more and more projects in our pipeline. So, but it's a lot of fun. So I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Absolutely. And now, before getting into the depth of the Hedera ecosystem, I would like to ask you a more personal question. And I was wondering, how did you get into decentralization? What got you interested in it?
Yeah, so for me, it's not really an economic standpoint. I'm a terrible person. I love politics. I'm very much an ideologue in the sense of politics and philosophy, and so that was kind of the underlying motivation for me to dive into decentralization and what's going on within the realm of cryptocurrency, and so with decentralization, I feel like it's a really interesting topic that can be explored and applied to a variety of different fields. And because you can discuss, decentralized economics, you can discuss, distributed systems, and you can understand distributed systems as decentralization of kind of tech, or even decentralized politics. And as an example, for me, the intriguing aspect of is decentralized politics. And so I'm going to use and abuse my home state of Texas here in the U.S. as kind of as a good example of decentralization, because you can understand the United States as a giant kind of federal, large political empire, political entity. It's a very big, country, lots of, hundreds of millions of people. It's a very big government, a very big centralized government. And so, with the system that American politics operates in, you have states which are already, effectively kind of, decentralized, power zones. And then within states, you have all the counties and all the little districts and cities, which are further decentralizations. And so for me, it's interesting to kind of, pursue politics in a route to decentralization. I don't necessarily agree with having very large, massive, like behemoth countries, dominating and dictating hundreds of millions and billions of people's lives. I feel like for the betterment, or for people's well-being, you're going to find that having smaller polities, smaller countries, more decentralized authority, more local authority to kind of do what you please is going to be what's most beneficial to people. And so, translating that into cryptocurrency, we're just essentially devolving power away from, in the case of the Federal Reserve and the people that run the Federal Reserve and how all that happens, devolving the authority into our hands to be able to create our own that are able to function alongside and improve the current, financial systems that we're already in. So that's kind of the long and short of, what got me interested in decentralization.
That's great. So from your point of view, decentralization would make the world better by giving access to everyone and to just opening up the systems to more people and making the game just more fair for everyone, right?
Yes, you can think of it as you're just bringing everything closer to you, because everything is about power at the end of the day. And so if the power is, if let's say you live in France, but for whatever reason the person who rules you is over in Beijing, does the person in Beijing know exactly what's going on in France? The answer is no. Having power very locally, very close to you, allows you and your community and your family and your friends to enjoy kind of a better life, and hopefully have better opportunities, as everything is already closer to you, and it's not in some far off land run by a group of people that don't really know you and don't really care about you.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons that got me interested in decentralization. Actually, is
Okay.
the connectivity that decentralization creates and the feeling of belonging. And I cannot help but think about DAOs when it comes to the feeling of belonging. And I would like to ask you, how important do you see DAOs in the progressive process from a centralized society to a decentralized one, and why?
Yeah, so DAOs are going to be, I think, a really great hybrid evolution of what you can do, because I think the most immediate application in the real world of a DAO, and this is going to be not the traditional answer. I think the traditional answer for, how would you translate a DAO into modern society, you would say a corporate entity, and we've already kind of seen some corporate structures switching over to the DAO structure. But I feel translation of DAOs would be into the example of the city or the local kind of community, where I know nearly every single city, it taxes its citizens, and it has a budget for police officers and firefighters and all the other services that a city provides for roads and stuff. But you could think of it that you are able to turn your city into a decentralized autonomous organization where all of these citizens are have the DAO tokens, or have some share of the DAO for the city, and are able to see how funds are moved around, and are able to more quickly, more efficiently, and more transparently vote on things that are going to directly impact them, and that they have more direct control over. Because, in a traditional city, you might imagine that there'd be a council or a group of people that you might vote on to, to do all of the work, to pay for city or pay for roads, or,
Yeah.
talk about police or get more policemen or more firefighters. But if you can kind of pull away that authority from them, and develop easy structures, easy, transparent voting mechanisms where all of the citizens are in the city are able to vote and quickly execute funds, then you can, the road that's, has potholes that's by your house could more, quickly get filled up, or the police station that needs to be rehabilitated, or the town council building that needs to be fixed could more quickly be fixed. So that's kind of where I would like to see, or where I imagine seeing a lot more evolution, from a centralized society to a decentralized society. So
I love how you see it in terms of real life application and not just in the digital world, because I think DAOs, to actually succeed and progress continuously for the long game, they need to affect our lives outside the digital world as well.
correct.
And at the end of the day, it all comes down to feeling that you can contribute to the decisions that affect you and affect those around you. And that's the main reason why DAOs, in my opinion, have become such a hot topic lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's the whole. I mean, my whole the motivation for me is to take all of the things that are happening here in Web3, and to the best of my abilities, try to bring that into reality. Because, imagine you've invested in whatever token, it's gone up. You have 10 million, $100 million worth of your magic internet money. But that means nothing if the area around you is so dilapidated, so worn down, so impoverished. While you may have a lot of money on the computer screen, the roads outside your house are terrible. The supermarket doesn't have food; it's run down. There's no restaurants. There's no local thriving community. So at that point, it becomes, what is the what can you do to bring all of the awesome things, all of the amazing innovations that are happening here on the internet, and what can you do to bring that into reality, to affect the people around you for the best, or for the benefit, rather than leaving them out to dry.
Absolutely. And one of the things that need to be different between Web3 and Web2 is that, for example, in Web2, the things that we do through social media and communities stays in Web2, it stays digital. But where I think DAOs need to succeed is transcending Web3 and transcending the digital world, and have real application and affecting our lives around the digital world as well.
Agreed. Yeah.
Now that we've touched on some interesting principles around decentralization and DAOs, let's move on to Hedera Starter. And I would like to start with a simple question. Why does Hedera Starter exist?
Yeah. So HederaStarter exists because we are taking our experience that we've learned from deploying projects, and then for myself, my team, kind of working other launchpads, on other chains, and then taking that to a chain that does, or to a network, sorry, that is pretty much starting from square one. You can understand, if you've heard of the phrase tabula rasa or blank slate, that's kind of where Hedera is. And I feel like it's going to be a really interesting experiment to see what we're able to develop, because, we're all coming from Ethereum and Avalanche and Solana and Phantom and Harmony and all these other blockchains that have very built up DeFi and, and DApp infrastructure. And now we're going to start over from square one. So it's basically like, we know how the game is going to be played. We know what the final, the be for a game, but now we're gonna, restart the game from the very first level, and then play the game again, knowing everything that we do. And so for me, that's kind of really interesting to see what we can do with that. for Hedera, because Hedera is, within the coming months, is going to have a fully working EVM that'll be that I'll be able to maintain parity with Ethereum. So anything that you can deploy on any of these other major L1s, you would be able to deploy on Hedera just the same. And so I'm very excited for what we're able to do, because we're going to be starting, effectively from zero to, 0 million or $0 of TVL on the network, and then bringing it up hopefully to $1 billion, and then on higher after that.
That makes two of us. It's just exciting to see such full of expertise team getting started from scratch, and especially when you start from scratch, the sky is the limit, and you can take
Exactly.
it towards any direction. It's a very exciting place to be in, especially when you're surrounded by skilled people and backed by experience and expertise.
Yeah, because the biggest thing is when you go, on a network like Hedera, most people on the most of the community isn't necessarily familiar with things like DeFi and these different dApps and metaverse dApps and things. So there's no biases, there's no preconceived notions that they might have against certain things, which allows you to experiment even more. And so I would hope that we're able to really be a center of innovation and really deploy some really unique dApps on Hedera, whether they're different innovative lending protocols or trading infrastructure or money markets or whatever. I really hope we're able to just be extremely innovative with everything that we do on the network. Because that's, I think, what's going to help define Hedera and what's going to help it stand out amongst the other L1s.
So it all comes down to innovating on Hedera, and I was wondering why did you decide to build a HederaStarter on Hedera?
Yeah, so the whole decision to build HederaStarter was we recognized that there was kind of like a gap in the market, and we also recognized that Hedera was eventually going to have its time in the sun. And so kind of what you're seeing right now with Near Protocol, now mind you, Bitcoin and Ethereum decided to kind of go downwards, but that's because they're tracking the NASDAQ, and the entirety of the stock market is macro bearish. But regardless of that, Near Protocol is pumping. Its TVL is up 120%. Aurora is going crazy. And that's happening because, VCs and everything all these people are throwing money into it. We're having unique, utility items being built. You have Near's USN token, which is trying to compete with UST. All of that's happening, and all of that, I believe, will eventually happen with Hedera. And if we can be one of the main catalysts to start that off, certainly we stand to make a lot of money ourselves and our community and our stakers and all that will make hopefully a lot of money. But more importantly, we're going to be able to really kickstart off a new, season for Hedera and be the reason that it breaks 1 billion TVL and then eventually gets on track to 10 billion TVL.
Well, that's amazing to hear, and it really does make sense in the grand scheme of things. Why have you chosen to build on Hedera? And for community members and for listeners that are not that used to the Hedera ecosystem yet, I would like to get your take on the current state of the Hedera ecosystem.
Yeah, so I filmed a wonderful video yesterday. It's about 30 minutes long of me whiteboarding and comparing Hedera and where it's at with its overall development to a bunch of other layer ones. And the best way to understand it as for the most part, when you look at these, if you go on DeFiLlama.com and if you look at TVL charts for Avalanche, for Solana, for Phantom, for Near right now, you're going to see there's like nothing really happening in terms of, if there's any value locked in, and suddenly you get a bump up, TVL goes up, 3x, kind of hangs out for a bit and then dumps back down. And then finally there's a real bit of a catalyst, and then it pumps all the way up. And that's what you're seeing with Near right now, and that, that 100% gain. And so we're kind of at the calm before the storm within the Hedera community. We have some kind of interesting little, tech going around. We have NFT functionality. So the big hype right now within Hedera, and for community members, is NFTs, NFT trading, A lot of community members are developing some fantastic and really interesting NFTs and NFT applications that they're getting, fleshed out. But for the vast majority, if you look at a macro view of Hedera, it's more so just getting primed. It's kind of hanging out. It's been trading sideways relatively, and that's how you can understand what's happening in the community. Nothing too much is going on, from that grand standpoint, but everyone is really just getting prepared once we get that EVM parity, because then all of these NFT applications that everyone's excited about are finally going to be able to start working as they would on any other EVM, and then we can start deploying all the dexes and all the other money markets and financial primitives that we have prepared, and then really start blowing up the on-chain analytics of what's happening.
Yeah, so it's basically a patience game for the moment that will start the Hedera ecosystem.
Yeah, and Hedera's been around for a while. A lot of people have been waiting, and so for some people, it's like it may not be the best to hear that they have to wait a bit more. But from just a macro view and an understanding of where the journey that L1s take as they acquire liquidity and acquire TVL, this is just part and parcel. It's part of the process. Eventually it's going to start really popping off, but we just need to be patient, and things will happen. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And just following up on this question, I was wondering, in your eyes, what differentiates the Hedera ecosystem from other networks? Because we've touched on Near and Ethereum network as well, but I would be curious to hear what differentiates Hedera from the ecosystem.
I'm actually going to reference kind of our discussion earlier with regarding to DAOs. And so I'll remind you the point of me with DAOs is, while we can do all these cool things in the internet, I want to be able to translate these amazing innovations into the physical realm and have material impact on people. And so Hedera, if we ignore all the awesome little technical things that differentiates it from all these layer ones, the biggest things that I can say are its governing council is that tangible material impact into the real world. So Hedera spent, and the reason why Hedera is only now getting an EVM is because it's kind of spent the last few years integrating itself into major Fortune 500 kind of real world brick and mortar actual physical companies that have real impact on real people. Companies like Avery Dennison, Boeing, IBM, LG, Deutsche Telekom, all these major actual physical companies that aren't Web3 companies. They're not these like funny money crypto companies. They are real companies that employ real people and produce your phones, produce your laptops, produce planes, run banks, things like that. So Hedera is focused on building up those relationships and integrating their services into those businesses. And so now, as Hedera kind of shifts focus to catering towards the retail crowd by building up their EVM and building up their smart contract ecosystem, that presents everyone a fantastic opportunity, because as I want to translate as much of these innovations into the real world as possible, it makes complete sense for me to go on Hedera, because when Hedera comes to me and says, hey, we're partnered with Standard Bank, we're partnered with Shinhan Bank and all these major financial companies, that means that these cool innovations that we have with the DEX or with the money market or a lending protocol have an endpoint, and they already have quick connections. So it seems much more feasible for me to develop a financial primitive on Hedera, and then speaks to the Hedera governing council, of which Standard Bank, as an example, is a part of that council, and then take the innovations from the DEX that we've seen and then show Standard Bank, and then begin to kind of integrate and create hybrid systems that are able to positively impact the people that Standard Bank serves, Standard Bank's customers, and all of their other network connections that we could then explore, because we're able to develop and deploy a product on Hedera. So Hedera just has these real world connections that I'm so excited to begin to explore as we kind of get decentralized applications that, for the most part, most other layer ones don't really have these, solid, industry connections.
Yeah, it almost sounds like Hedera is a bridge between the Web3
Exactly.
and the real world.
Exactly. That's a good way to understand it. Correct.
Yeah, and now I was actually curious. I've been gathering and making a sense of where your mindset is and where Hedera Starter stands.
Hmm.
But I would be curious to hear from you on the main big picture goals for Hedera Starter.
Yeah. So we can understand this kind of in a time frame. So between now and let's say the EVM, and let's say that we're going to have the EVM by the end of Q3. Um,
Hmm.
the focus between now and then is as we deploy on Binance Smart Chain and on Hedera, we're kind of hopefully act as a great kind of liquidity gateway. We'll have Hashport and a few other chains and bridge or a few other bridges, sorry, that we're speaking to. And so the whole goal between now and the end of Q3 is to exist on both, another layer one and Hedera, so we can begin generating that overall marketing hype and the marketing focus on Hedera,
Yeah.
because the fight that we have to have is, there's only so many people that are currently in the Hedera community. It's a rather small community, but it's a very strong and tight knit community. But we need to start pulling in audiences from the Binances, from the Ethereums, from the Solanas, from these other layer ones, and show them all the awesome things that are happening. So between now and Q3, we're going to ideally start launching projects, and then attracting initial audiences. And then once we kind of full blown have smart contracts, once we're the same as all the other Ethereum layer ones, then the focus is to push, to that $500 million TVL is kind of the first big macro goal for us, and to get, quite a few financial primitives launched between the end of Q3 and then into kind of Q1 of next year, and then hopefully put us on track for $1 billion in TVL, either end of Q2 or into Q3, Q4 of 2023, and then as we push towards a billion, hopefully by that point, we have 100 dApps. We have lots of different GameFi being built up, because I feel like GameFi kind of follows after you have a lot of these financial primitives, because you need liquidity to flow into the system, and that you need there to be lots of money within the system for you to develop these kind of tertiary, metaverse and NFT GameFi structures. Um, so to kind of summarize, basically we're looking at, we're focused on kind of getting to the EVM and getting to 500 million TVL, and then pushing on towards a billion. And during that entire time, kind of evangelizing Hedera and pulling up more and more people over from other layer ones to Hedera. So I imagine it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be a nice, fun challenge. But I'm in this industry because I want to challenge myself and I want to challenge my team. And I believe we can accomplish the task. So it's going to be a lot of fun and a lot of hard work.
Absolutely. And the bigger the mission, the more interesting the journey is.
Exactly.
And I cannot emphasize enough how important the community is as an element in building the reputation of the Hedera ecosystem. And, for me, building a community comes down to sharing the mission with the community members and with the other outside communities, and through collaboration. And what we are doing right now, sitting down and having this insightful talk, this is a community building initiative right here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, moving on, we've touched a bit on dApps, and as dApps sound great in theory, you and I both know that many have failed on the attempt to create stability and the structure needed within their strategies. So I was curious, what does HederaStarter do to help projects gain that structure and alignment and consistency during their progress?
Yeah, so I come from a very structured, a very kind of rigorous background, more traditional work experience, and so it's translating that kind of structure into the fluidity and the dynamicism of crypto. Because, I understand, we all want to wear sweatpants and hang out in dark rooms all day and take showers once a week and eat Cheeto Puffs. And I'm not forcing it. I know it sounds awesome. I'm not forcing all of our projects to, go buy an office building, go wear suits all day and do that stuff. But the whole focus for me is the idea and the understanding of integrity and authenticity, and the consistent application of those principles. And I think if you, no matter what, keep those principles in the forefront of your mind, and if we instill that successfully in every single one of the projects that comes through and their team, then they're naturally going to kind of develop characteristics and have an approach that is ideal to what we're looking for as we launch projects. Because if you don't have a good work schedule, or you're not honest with your teammates, or there's a lack of transparency, things that fall within the realm of overall personal integrity, that's when you kind of begin to see stability issues. If you sit down, let's take a look at let's talk about code. Okay, so do you have the integrity to admit that, okay, maybe I didn't put enough effort into the smart contract? Did I completely rigorously check the smart contract? Did we do an internal audit? Did I take this internal audit seriously? Did I devote the necessary time to thinking about the major edge cases and the major issues, for that could potentially cause exploits or cause hacks? Not to bring light to like the Beanstalk issue, but if you're aware of Beanstalk and what happened with the exploit of their stable coin, they lost a few, 75, $80 million. And I'm not trying to, point at the team and say it's their fault, but, there's edge cases and there's very, minute issues. Do we have the integrity to try to, publicize and, let everyone know about potential risks that are structurally inherent to the protocol? And all of that ties back into us as a team, HederaStarter as an incubation team, instilling in every single one of these protocols the very focus on integrity and being authentic. There's a bunch of other things we provide, whether it's funding, whether it's protocol refinement, tokenomic adjustment, working with the team to fix various different aspects of their protocol. But I feel at the end of the day, we are going to, be the most successful as an incubator. HederaStarter is going to be the most successful by getting our teams and getting our IDO people to understand and value integrity, and to realize the role that character plays into how they govern themselves as a person, and then govern their projects, and then run their communities. Because integrity is going to be the guiding light of how they treat their community, and then eventually how that community treats the project, and then treats the rest of the ecosystem. So that hopefully kind of explains what I think we can really bring.
Absolutely, and it really does come down to transparency, managing expectations, and aligning on the value that the teams are working towards building.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, you touched a bit before on community building, and I'm very curious to hear from you. How does HederaStarter approach community building, since we know how critical it is in a project's long-term success?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the things that I see is, within the realm of decentralization, we all want to be anonymous. We all want to be, not really at the face of a project or anything. But I still feel like, within the stages of development that the industry is in, we still need to have a person who is the face of the organization, who is really accountable. And so while a lot of people want to remain anonymous and be part of like large teams and not really, there's no blame to be, specifically placed on anybody. I have the approach that, as the co-founder, I'm going to be the face of the HederaStarter. I'm the face of the project, which means that every time there's an error, every time there's a mistake, an issue, a problem, all of that ends up, being on my shoulders, and I accept that responsibility. Now the question is, how does this kind of apply to the community? Well, the segue from that is, as I go out and act as the face of HederaStarter, as their leader, as their operational guy, I'm, whether I'm doing Twitter lives, whether I'm doing YouTube videos, and we post videos like every single day, when I'm
Mm.
sitting down with our community and discussing, various different things going on in Hedera and HederaStarter and the overall markets. It's being that kind of comforting face and kind of that pillar that people can look towards and say, hey, I can. This is the person who is running Hedera Starter. These are the values that he espouses or espouses. When there's issues or where there's problems, he's the one who takes the responsibility and works to do the best that he can to solve those problems, so that he can deliver us the best product possible. That's kind of the whole feeling that I've been trying to give off, and I will continue to work to give off to our community. And I think that's kind of what's really helped them, or really helped us generate such a strong and rather healthy and organic community, is by kind of being that person and being that face and willing to take the responsibility, because the payoff is that everyone is going to place their trust in me and be willing to look towards us more than other competitors or other projects, because we have that more human presence to us.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a strong leadership mindset right there. And for someone who's been working with quite an eventful ecosystem, we are working with different projects, and there's always so much going on. This is a question that just popped into my mind as I was listening to you, and I was wondering, how do you manage to keep the team aligned on the short-term goals while also keeping in mind the bigger picture goals and the long-term mindset that you have to have in this industry?
Yeah, so I kind of adapted from my like traditional kind of work experience, and so the hard and fast is that every single we meet. I mean, we're speaking every single day. Obviously because we're a team through Telegram, Discord, whatever, through calls and Google Meets
Mm.
and stuff. But to really keep that alignment on the short term and on the long term, there is a bit of structure to it. We're meeting, we specifically sit down, twice a week, on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and we go
Mm.
over kind of like the entirety of the week. What did we do from Sunday to Wednesday? How did that work? Did that work well? What didn't work well? Um, what projects are we going over, all the things that are happening, and we'll kind of recap what's the state of all the projects that we're incubating, what's the state of marketing, what's the state of all the content we're producing, what's the what are the various different partnerships we're working on, what's going on with that. And then we'll do that again on Friday, and then each time on Wednesday we look a week ahead, and then build out a schedule. And then Friday or Saturday again, we look a week ahead, and then we're constantly working on a calendar for the entirety of the month and then for the rest of the year. And so if you look at our internal kind of company documents, we have detailed calendar, or a very very detailed calendar that has a lot of different goings on for every single day, what's going on, the purpose and the reasoning behind every single event, and then how that kind of ties into our overall global, or overall macro strategy. And so, how do we keep that focus on the macro? And it's just a matter of, putting together a reasonable schedule, for the weeks ahead and the weeks prior, understanding, why we're doing certain things and giving good reasoning behind doing certain things, and then being able to sit down and say, okay, we did this thing, did this actually help us achieve any sort of short-term or long-term goal? Yes or no? Okay, no, let's not do it. Yes, let's continue to do it, or let's try to refine an improvement. And so all that's happening because we're willing to chat, willing to take feedback, and willing to say, okay, what is working, what did I do that I shouldn't have done, or what did I do that I need to do more often, and constantly understanding that no matter what you do, you're never going to be good enough, and there's always a way that you can improve, and there's always somebody beating you, whether that person or whether that DApp or DAO is on Hedera, or whether it's on Polkadot or Ethereum or somewhere else. There's always a person doing something better than you, and you need to be able to try to figure out why they're doing it better and then try to beat them at their own game.
Absolutely, and I align with your mindset so much, and the reason is that I'm a big believer in feedback,
Yeah,
and for me, feedback is such a critical element. And it has to be both. It has to go both ways. It has to be asked for, and it has to be offered. So for me, out of everything that you just mentioned, feedback really stands out, and the importance of feedback as well.
exactly. Yeah. Without feedback, you don't know what
Um,
you're doing wrong.
yeah, exactly. Or you know what you're doing right, and you can improve and build on it.
Exactly.
Now we've mentioned a few important strengths that Hedera Starter has, and I would like to flip the tables on this one and ask you, what do you think the biggest challenges are for Hedera Starter at the moment?
Yeah, biggest challenge. The biggest one is going to be how do we handle and how does the Hedera community handle HederaStarter launching on Binance, Smart Chain, and then bridging over to Hedera because with our decentralized application, the launchpad, we don't have the necessary smart contracts on Hedera to be able to launch on Hedera mainnet. So we're having to launch on Binance and then bridge over to from Binance to Hedera. So, oh, sorry, I'm yawning.
Mm.
It's early in the morning, but is going to be the biggest challenge. It's going to be a bit of a marketing, quite a bit of a marketing challenge, and that's something that I've been trying to tell everybody as much as possible. We have weekly technical updates that come out every single Monday, Monday and Tuesday, and we mentioned that at the top of the article. You know that we're having to launch on Binance first before we deploy on Hedera, and then I talked to everyone on our Telegrams and our Discord about that. I've done videos on it, and so I've been very vocal to try to be ahead of the curve about that. But you know, that is going to be a big challenge because we are Hedera Starter, and why are you launching on Binance? And it's like, okay, well, we technically are it is not possible to launch on Hedera and do all the things that we would like. We now have a working application if we wanted to launch on Hedera. So thus we have to launch on. So biggest challenge that we are facing and are having to overcome as we speak.
Well, good luck on that. And just hearing the way um, you align the team internally and your structured approach, I have no doubt that you will manage to pull it off.
Yeah.
Now, at the beginning of the episode, we touched on DAOs and how they can affect the outside world, but I would like to talk to you about DAOs within your Hedera Starter ecosystem. And I was wondering, how is HDAO run and what type of decisions can be taken by token holders within your DAO?
Yeah, so HDAO is an awesome component, something that I'm really excited about because it's going to be the mechanism by which a lot of people who have traditionally been locked out of the pre-money kind of seed private strategic round fundraising process. That's going to be how the HDAO will be how those people will be able to get in. That's how retail is going to be able to eventually get into these super lucrative opportunities. So the
Hmm.
HDAO, in nature, its whole purpose is to be the governing factor that decides what passes and what does not pass through the incubation program over to the HPAD, because a project enters incubation, we incubate them and then speak with the various different people that are in the HDAO, and then we all work together as a giant group to bring a project from 0 to 1. And then once we all believe that they're in the most complete state possible, then that's when we'll have the vote to say, okay, will this project pass from the incubation phase to the fundraising and the launchpad phase? And if the HDAO decides no, then we have to abide by those wishes. And likely the decision has been made with good reason. There's likely something that the community members of the HDAO believe is an issue with the project, or there's some tokenomics flaw, or some reason, maybe they don't believe that the project's going to be viable in the long run. So it could be any reason. as to why members of the HDAO would vote no for a project. But then on the flip side, they can also obviously vote yes. And so rather than us being like other launch pads where we simply say, okay, hey, we're just going to go get projects and then bring them up to you. And then if you want to, if you want to buy the tokens, then, if you want to buy the IDO tokens, then you can. If you don't, then you can. Then you don't have to. We're kind of coming and saying, okay, we're going to involve you in the process from square one and allow you to participate in all the seed and lucrative funding, and then also accept, and ask you for feedback and solicit you for your own ideas, for how we can make projects better or make protocols more successful in the long run. And then obviously they'll be able to be the governing vote as to if these projects, as if these projects are able to go and proceed to the launch pad and then be launched. So that's kind of what's to be expected with the HDAO, and something that I really think I try to speak as much as I can about the HDAO, but a lot of people are kind of not aware of it. But I'm excited as once we deploy and once we are able to see how the DApp is able to function, then I think they'll begin to understand the amazing opportunity that we have with the HDAO.
Absolutely, and I think that HDAO is such a important component within your ecosystem, and one that puts you as a co-founder of the starter in a very interesting position where you are used to be the face of the project for Hedera Starter, but for the DAO, you are just not a member.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now, as we've talked about the DAO component, I was curious, how does Hedera Starter's project pipeline look like? As I am very curious to see what upcoming projects you have within your ecosystem, and I'm sure our community is very curious too.
Yeah, so the big two that I'll drop alpha on, or that I'll shill for today, are Tangent Finance, which will be a cool DEX that we're getting ready to deploy, and then Metastable, which is another kind of synthetic AMM that we've also kind of incubated for a bit prior. So we have those two guys, and they are very much financial primitives, and are so they're very much financial primitives, which is very important because we really need financial primitives prior to a lot of other things on chain for liquidity to really actually flow in the ecosystem, and for investors that are outside of the ecosystem to come on. Because obviously, if you have lots of Ethereum or lots of BNB or lots of Solana or AVAX or whatever, that does you no good if you can't bring that over and transact that here on Hedera and convert that to some other sort of currency. So those are the major kind of projects where we're getting ready to deploy within the upcoming months, that I'm willing to release information about. And we feel that they're kind of going to play a kind of a supremely important role within the ecosystem. And then from that, we have a lot of NFT, metaverse, GameFi projects that we're speaking to that are kind of getting ready to join the pipeline, because we focused a lot of our marketing and kind of community development on the NFT community within Hedera.
Right.
And so now we have some great relations with a lot of different artists. And we've done our best to kind of work and run little giveaways with artists every single week to kind of drum up support for them, to get the word out about what the art that they're producing. And so now a lot of them also have ideas for different metaverses. Some of them have really cool game ideas. And so now it's like helping them translate their ideas into reality, to make the game or the metaverse of their dreams. So that's kind of what it looks like. It's a mixture of DeFi and a little bit of GameFi, and some NFT stuff. So quite the full pipeline, and we're already working a lot as is. And so it's only going to get more busy and more fun as we get further out. So
That sounds exciting, and I'm happy to hear that you're working with artists and making them an important element within the pipeline for this year.
yeah, no matter what, everything is kind of downstream from culture and downstream from art. And so art begets, or culture begets art, and then art begets politics, begets economics, and all of that. And so, that's kind of like a philosophical take, but artists are by nature kind of like the creative vessels. They are the source of creativity for a lot of things. And so that also applies to blockchains and networks and layer ones. What artists do, and the cool things that artists are able to create and come up with are going to be, I think, primary drivers for the culture of the network. Because it's cool if you have a DEX, it's cool if you have lending protocols, it's cool if you have a whatever. But one of the primary, I think, drivers for people coming on chain is going to be those intangible items, that creativity, the passion, and the culture that's developed by the community. And so that's why we're working so hard with NFT artists, because we understand the immense value that they hold within attracting other people to Hedera.
Absolutely. And, creativity and collaboration and storytelling will be at the center of Web3 and decentralization without a doubt.
Agreed, yeah.
Now, last but not least, as we are well into Q2, I was wondering, how does the rest of 22 look like for HederaStarter?
Yep. So we are looking to launch in May, launching projects beginning from that point, and then really beginning the DApp launching process in I think mid to end of Q3 and then into Q4. So you could think of it as like a giant kind of like exponential chart. So we're kind of starting off, a little bit of volume right now with some projects being announced, some things being discussed. But then as we kind of get towards the end of 2022, we're going to really start pushing our projects as the EVM is going to finally be there. And so we'll be able to support all the different DApp use cases. So that's kind of what to look forward to. A bunch of different, fun marketing things. I know we're hoping to do a lot more live events. We want to explore the possibility of doing meetups and things like that. So there's a lot going on, and we're very excited for kind of everything. Also, I cannot wait for Christmas and the New Year, so then I can sleep for a few weeks and recharge for 2023.
Absolutely. And I can speak on behalf of our team and our community that we are all excited to see how the rest of 2022 looks like for HederaStarter. And I am pretty sure this is one of the first of many to follow when it comes to us collaborating and sitting down together, exploring the space and exploring the advancements that happen within the Hedera ecosystem.
Yeah.
Conor, this was a fantastic conversation, and it was my absolute pleasure to host you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and for guiding our community through the Hedera ecosystem and HStarter's innovative approach to launch innovative projects on the ecosystem. And I can speak on the behalf of my team when I say that we are very proud to be direct partners with HederaStarter, and we are very grateful for your support and our ongoing collaboration.
Yeah, of course. I mean, y'all have been great so far, and I'm excited to kind of begin putting a lot of the Hedera tokens on FMFW and really start to see a lot more HTS support around the ecosystem. So I thank y'all for kind of being such an innovative exchange and willing to partner with us as we kind of grow out our ecosystem. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely, and we know that there are a few HTS projects that are in the pipeline, and we are currently working with them to integrate them, and that's something that our listeners and our community can look forward to. So thank you for your time again, and thank you for everyone that tuned in today, and thank you for being part of our mission to free the money, free the world.
Heck yeah.